Hi, everyone. Welcome and thank you for joining us for the Skyline College Learning Community's Career Conversations. Today, we are talking with specialist experts, folks who are in the careers of arts, language, and communications. I'm Janice Lobo Sapigao, she, her, and I'm an assistant professor of English at Skyline College. I'm also the English instructor for the Cypher Hip Hop Learning Community. I identify as Filipino American. I myself was a first generation college student. I did not attend community college right after high school. Just like one of our panelists, I went to UC San Diego, and afterwards I took community college classes. And from there I realized, oh, this is what the community really looks like. So I really love my community college courses. I really feel very lucky to have been asked to be on this panel as a facilitator today. I'm really lucky also to work at Skyline College. It is 17% Filipino students, and I just feel like that is exactly the community that I tend to look out for and hope to serve. I'm also the coordinator for the Honors Transfer Program, and so I work with students on individual research projects. So it's been really exciting to see students just sort of like dive into their own projects that hopefully one day will result in their careers. So I'm really excited to talk with all of you to see how all of your stories come together and lead to our intersection for today. And I just wanted to throw this in there. I'm also the Santa Clara County Poet Laureate for this year and next year. And so I'm sure that none of us are strangers to being more than one thing at any particular time. So feel free to pull from your experiences in all of the different fields you have ever inhabited or lived in. And I'm really excited to talk with you. So we have 5 panelists, and I would love for you all to please introduce yourselves as well. And I'm gonna tag us in the same order. Maybe, can we go with Dara? Can you start us off?
Yeah, hi everyone. Thank you so much for having me today. I'm really excited to be in conversation with everybody. My name is Dara Katrina del Rosario, she, her, hers, and my work exists on the confluence of art, social justice, ethnic studies, and placemaking, placekeeping. Currently, I'm the communications manager for SOMAR's Cultural Center, as well as the African American Arts and Culture Complex. I also curate for Kearney Street Workshop, along with, all the other places and nonprofits that I work and volunteer with. I do identify as a first generation Pinay. I was born in the Philippines, grew up in LA, and I'm planting roots in the Bay Area.
Yes, thanks for being here, Dara. And Dara is also at work and is modeling excellent safety procedures by wearing a mask at work. All right, Anna.
Hello, everyone. I am so excited to be here. This is super fun. Great way to spend Monday night. My name is Anna Vittoni, she, her, hers. I'm a personal brand strategist. I'm also the founder of Personal Brand Accelerator and host of the Personal Branding Podcast. So all the personal branding goodies, if you want them. And I got my bachelor's degree from Sonoma State in liberal arts. I'm not particularly using it, but I have gained so much from that experience at Sonoma State and really learning how to communicate smart and to say what you mean and to think critically. And all of what I learned in my time at Sonoma State, I do use now in my career, and I use to help other people communicate who they are honestly. And really that's at the core of what my work is all about. So I help entrepreneurs build their personal brand, optimize all of their digital assets, and really communicate with confidence online. And so I built a strong community called Personal Brand Accelerator that has primarily entrepreneurs in this community, but also I found that through this work, most of the people who enroll in this program are people who are committed to sharing the truth of their experiences, honestly, and have a message they want to share with the world. And often after they start building their personal brand, they find out that they have the ability to become an entrepreneur. And that's what's so extraordinary about this work and about personal branding and the art of communication. So super excited to be here and to talk with all of you today. So thank you for having me.
Yes, That's so great. It's our honor, Anna. Can we go to Dave?
Hi, everyone. I'm Dave Rudel, and I did attend community college for a bit before transferring into the California State University system. Also a graduate of Sonoma State, where I did the liberal studies and international studies. Studied abroad in Zimbabwe for a year and South Asia, traveling independent study. Also taught English in Japan for a few years before then working in the California State University, managing study abroad international exchange programs for quite a few years. About 5 years ago, I made a jump from higher education on one side to working for Zoom. And I work now for the last few years, I've been working selling on the sales team, selling to universities and colleges throughout the US. And just really kind of enjoying being on that side and being able to assist all those schools during this crisis and make sure that they can keep things moving along.
Yes, thanks, Dave. We're in your neighborhood right now, basically. Irina.
Hi, everyone. Nice to meet all of the panelists and Janice and Marissa, who's helping with tech. And I'm so excited to meet all of you who are watching. Thank you so much for taking the time. My name is Irina. I identify as they, she, and I identify as a third generation renter in San Francisco. I live at home, and I live at home with my mom and my brother. And what I do is I work now at Stanford University as an arts administrator, managing grants for students. And before that, I worked in the San Francisco Unified School District as an after-school program teacher. And so that really helped me understand how to work with families and take that purpose work wherever I go. As Janice mentioned, I went to UCSD also. And actually, I also worked with Dara. We were both after-school program teachers at Galing Bata bilingual program. And we also collaborated on an ethnic studies and Filipino studies photo program called Soma Pagmahal, which serves the San Francisco Soma Pilipinas Filipino Cultural Heritage District, which is one of my homes. So it's nice to meet all of you.
Oh, I love it. Thanks, Serena. Sandeep.
Hey everyone, my name is Sandeep Dosanjh and I use the pronouns he and him. And I represent the LGBTQIA plus community as well as the East Indian community. And I currently work for the Elk Grove Unified School District, which is the 5th largest school district in California. And before that, I worked in San Francisco doing public relations for a tech firm. And before that, I was a TV reporter. So currently with Elk Grove Unified, I've been there for 5 years, where I manage about 200 different social media accounts and do project management, event planning, positive media coverage, as well as event planning. Not sure if I already said that.
That's so great.
So one thing I would like to add is I went to a community college for 2.5 years here in the Sacramento region. And then I transferred to San Francisco State University before I studied abroad for a year in Sweden. And then before I graduated in a degree in TV broadcast news, I did another summer abroad program in South Korea.
Oh, wow. I'm super excited to hear from all of you. At this point, just even after listening to the introductions, I can really tell just from this first part of the conversation that we're all very different. And I'm, as a facilitator, hoping to highlight the differences between us that the folks watching or listening can take away a multitude of information and advice about your experiences. So my goal, if I could have a goal for this, is to see how we can all connect ourselves to each other. And I think a lot of that just begins with listening. So I'm really excited to participate, but really just to listen tonight. And so I have a first question, which is, and some of you talked about this, so maybe focus on like the second part of the question. The question is, what did you study in college, and how did your earlier career choices and transition lead you to where you are now? And anyone can start in whatever order.
I'll go. So can you repeat the question?
Yes, I also put it in the chat just in case, but I will read it one more time. What did you study in college? How did your earlier career choices and transition lead you to where you are now?
Yeah, so I studied radio and TV with the emphasis in broadcast TV news. And ever since I was 3 years old, I always had this fascination with watching the news. And I decided at a young age that I wanted to be a TV reporter and tell the stories that, the community is living and really showcase those stories. But then after I got the degree and I actually was a TV reporter out in the middle of nowhere in this great country, I realized the reality of it was different than what I expected. And it also didn't help that it was during the Great Recession and there were cuts being made, but also the different cultures throughout the country that people that were born and raised in California just don't have to deal with. So I decided to move back to the 21st century of the great state of California. And I, thought it was very important to try to find a way to repurpose my degree and do something that I felt made a difference. So I went back to San Francisco State University and got a certification in social media marketing. And that's how I transitioned my degree into public relations. And I'm so thankful for the opportunity to have that certification program to repurpose my original degree, because now I'm doing something that I believe in and that I'm giving back, working in school PR. And it's literally so nice to come home and really believe in what you're doing and making a difference.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. And sometimes it takes traveling somewhere else to like decide where you want to end up. And actually what you said kind of reminds me of what Anna was talking about earlier when you mentioned like Sandeep said, the reality was different. And Anna, you mentioned not using or feeling like you weren't using your degree from college. And then how did you transition? What skills do you use? What knowledge do you use from your degree to your career?
Yeah, I think for a long time, I felt like there was this disconnect. Like I had started this business and, building this business. And I always kind of thought, gosh, I didn't really even need my degree. I kind of had that thought in my head, which was silly. And I think it was about a year ago, or maybe like a little bit less than a year ago, I went back for this like 50th anniversary for the Hutchins program at Sonoma State. And it'd been a long time since I was on the campus. And, it was really nice to see some old professors and to do a seminar and to talk around a table. And just as I was sitting back at that table among all of these, old friends and professors, and we're all speaking and communicating with one another and talking about our careers and our lives. And I thought to myself, oh my gosh, this is everything. This is what my job is all about. And of course there's a connection there. And so for me to have that realization, it kind of came full circle that, even if it doesn't always feel like it directly relates, it usually does. I think it was really cool for me to come back and see that and feel that. And actually what I realized too is, I initially went to Sonoma State to become a teacher. I didn't end up taking a traditional route, but I'm very much a teacher now in my job. All I do is teach all day. And so it's funny how that happens. So, yeah.
Oh, I love it.
Anna, yeah, it's just really funny. Anna, I also did the Hutchins School and had
Yes.
Yeah, I had intended to teach as well. And actually, when I started teaching, realized that I really wanted to be more on the support and advocacy side of students. And so moved over into more of the advising role. And, but I really appreciated that program. Again, just kind of giving you a really broad base of knowledge and really making you be more resourceful and try to solve problems with groups and have, you know, really good conversations around topics, and that those interpersonal skills that I learned around the table at the Hutchins School was really valuable throughout my career as well.
Yeah, you know, Dave, I think the one thing that Hutchins like really taught me was there are no rules. There really aren't. And if you can like adopt that mindset and mentality in your work and the way that you approach your life and communicate in relationships and stuff, it just gives you this whole, like it unlocks all of these opportunities. And Hutchins really enforced that, you know, think outside the box and think differently and do things differently. It does not have to always be the status quo. So.
Oh, I love that. I love that we're already seeing a lot of intersections and connections and things that already existed before we came here today. And shout out to Hutchins, I guess. Hutchins alum. I wanted to see if Dara or Rena, if you wanted to mention any kind of transition you had felt in your careers.
You can go, Arena.
Well, I think Dara and I there's some parallels, and I feel like it's amazing. This is a panel where all of us have been part of education, the education system, and somehow aside from going to school. So I love that intersection. Like Sandeep now works at Elk Grove Unified, Anna and Dave have thought about being teachers and still using that framework in the work that you do. And for me and Dara, I mean, Janice also, me and Dara, we worked as after-school program teachers, we were co-workers, and now we both transitioned into arts administration, which is really fascinating, and we still carry that spirit. I can't speak for Dara, for myself. In relation to Janice's earlier question, I did study human development and art when I was in college and African studies, and how that really brought it together was I just really love joining everything. So even after I graduated from college, I still went to community college. I connected with San Francisco City College, and I got to know the Philippine Studies department there. And I also got to know educators at Skyline. So shout out to Professor Rod, Professor Liza, folks who are part of the Pinoy Education, Pinoy PEP. And so I learned how to be a teacher to public school youth and college students in that way. And that brings me a lot in my work as an artist and just a cultural worker. And as I mentioned, I live at home, so family is really important in my work, and that intergenerational connection, which I appreciate a lot in my community college classes, because I took art history in community college, and that was the most important part for me to learn the different ways that we learn about art at different parts of our lives. So folks who are working 2 jobs, they're taking these night classes. Folks who are parents, students who are in high school and they're taking community college classes, as well as students who finish high school. And there might be a stigma with how community college is thought of, but I hope that's changing now, because there's so many compassionate educators in that. And I wouldn't have known that if I didn't go to San Francisco City College right after my 4-year.
Yeah, I really like the way that Arena describes sort of like being on 2 different sides of the education spectrum, like being there as a student and then also like being the teacher, and then also in some ways kind of like being studied. Arena was recently featured on Pendarvis Hershaw's KQED podcast, and I listened to that about being a 3rd generation renter. And I just thought, oh, this is a beautiful intersection of what we're talking about today, arts, communication, and language. So yeah, thank you for sharing your stories in like multiple ways, multiple mediums. Dara, before we move on, did you want to add anything?
Yeah, so in undergrad, I studied art history and minored in anthropology. I've always been interested in learning about the past. And one thing that I loved about art is that it was a way to learn about multiple histories that we're not often privy to, right? That we might not always have access to in our K through 12 education. You know, and that was my mentality of going into art history and anthropology. And the more I got into it, I was like, you know, there's still something missing here, right? Like there's still a framework or a lens that I don't have the language for it right now, but something just still feels absent. And from there, I started taking ethnic studies classes at San Francisco State. And I really credit my ethnic studies classes, my professors, my classmates, and all of them, because they really helped me find the language to name my own experiences, right? And I think that there was something really powerful about being able to name like, oh, I've experienced internalized racism. I've experienced, you know, X, Y, and Z. And this is how it manifests in my life. And this is also how it manifests in the artwork of people of color, right? Or Black, Indigenous people of color. And these are also things that I have to take into consideration when I'm doing this research, when I'm writing this paper, when I'm going out and, you know, like doing my work as a communications manager at different organizations. And like really trying to understand like how can we use art as a way to explore the many dimensions of a community or the many dimensions and histories of a person. And so like with my you know, like my many hats at this moment, like so much of what I've learned by bridging together ethnic studies and learning about scholars and artists who bridge ethnic studies and art history, I think I'm able to provide, like I'm able to expand my own perspective and my own lens within this field, right? Like really trying to drive in like a story, like really focusing on storytelling, really focusing on humanization within communications, right? Because I think more than anything, like communications is storytelling, and with storytelling, there's empathy.
Ooh, thank you, Dara. I really like what you said when you said something still feels absent. I think a lot of times that's what building a career really does feel like. And in many ways, it's also like not just a career, it's also a community practice, right? It's like a cultural tradition. It's stepping in from being the learner to like being the doer. And so I think like your story really captures that. And it kind of leads to my next question, because I feel like you're also kind of getting there. What career difficulty or challenge has taught you the biggest lesson? And it sounds like you were able to make a lot of connections from all of these different lessons that you were learning. So for Dara or for anybody, what is the career difficulty or challenge that has taught you a big lesson? Everyone's like, there's so many.
You know, I think it's important for people to know that change will happen and you can't shy away from it. And you might have this dream of, you know, getting your degree in a certain industry or field, but after reality sets in and, you know, you have that job, you might realize, you know, there's politics involved here that I just don't want to deal with, or it's just not what you thought it would be. So don't be afraid to make a change, because, you know, a lot of places want to see you're able to finish a program, such as obtain a college degree and graduate from a university. And a lot of the skills that you get from any degree are transferable to any industry. So, you know, I transferred my skills from being a TV reporter on camera to, you know, being behind the scenes and helping journalists with covering my business that I'm pitching for when I worked for the tech industry, or now my school district that I work for, in securing media coverage. So I'm able to apply my college degree in other ways in my current industry. So, don't shy away from obtaining what you wanted to go to school for, and know that any job or any industry is applicable to you, even if you decide to change away from the degree that you wanted to get.
I think that's, oh, go ahead.
Yeah, Sandeep, I really liked what you said there. And I think also just not getting stuck in a path and having blinders to opportunities around you, and just being open to those opportunities and not get stuck in, I have to do it this way, or I'm down this path, I have to continue this way. Because if you're open to those opportunities, they often present themselves, and you have to be able to jump and take advantage of those opportunities.
Yeah, and Dave, I actually had those blinders on, and I didn't know what to do. So when I moved back to California from out of state, I was unemployed for 2 years, sending thousands of resumes and, to every communication type of position. But, with the recession, everything changed during the Great Recession. So I had those blinders on, not knowing how to repurpose my degree. So now looking back, I'm able to realize, you could apply any degree to any industry. You just have to be nimble and, be street smart, so to speak.
And be able to articulate that to the people who you're trying to, work with.
I think it's also important to remember that, growth isn't linear, and it's, there are no rules, but also it's like, there's, especially when you're young and you're first getting started, it can be difficult to experience those highs and lows, because sometimes you're going to feel great and you're going to feel on top of the world, like everything is working out perfectly. And then sometimes you're going to feel low, like nothing's working out, or you're in this season of uncertainty, and that's hard to wade through. So I think, it's important to savor those high moments of confidence when you do feel uncertain and when things don't always look clear. So I think that's really important to remember.
I really love that. I feel like you all are like a career hype team here. It's like so encouraging to know that those struggles are just part of that journey. A lot of times I hear students who say that they don't want to major in the thing that they love because they're not sure if they'll be able to make a career out of it. But what I'm hearing from you all is that that's not the case. I really like what Sandeep said, be nimble. And then Dave, right, be able to articulate what are those experiences. And Anna, with this nugget right here, growth isn't linear. I think that's really important for students to know that, doing what you love kind of like really comes through and will be the thing that moves you into where you're meant to be. I really like that.
I just want to also, sometimes it might take you a few steps to get where you want to be. And I think there is kind of this expectation, maybe I'm generational or something, but this is what I want and I deserve to be here now. But it might, when I started working at Zoom, I started at the bottom. I was, making cold calls, and I had to work through a few positions to get to where I wanted to be. And so it does take persistence and hard work, and it might not be that first step. You might have to take a few steps to get to where you want to be.
Yeah.
Going along with what you just said, Dave. Sorry, Janice.
No, go ahead. I'm just going to say I love it.
I was just going to say, I'm not exactly where I want to be. And once I transitioned out of TV news, my dream, I know what my dream is. And now I'm accomplishing different pieces of the puzzle in order to achieve my dream. And, last week I just started a grad program through Purdue University, and that's part of the piece of the puzzle to ultimately achieve the career aspiration that I have for myself, which, let's be realistic, is not going to be the end all be all.
What is your grad program in, Sandeep?
So the grad program is in organizational leadership with the emphasis on strategic communications. So because I don't have a public relations degree at all, there's elements that I've learned on the job, which a lot of us can attest to is the best way to learn. However, I would like to fine tune those elements to, make my resume even stronger. And so I'm the best candidate for any organization that I'm a part of.
Yeah, I really love this. This is so great. Pieces to a puzzle. Find all the pieces. Bring yourself the pieces. Yes. I think, I wanted to say too that I knew I wanted to teach English, right? But I didn't necessarily, I can't just like jump right into that. So I actually started where Dara and Arena started with like after school programs, working with students on English and history and even French, but I don't really know French, but I tried. And that sort of gave me the teaching experience. And then eventually I went on to get a master's in writing. So all of that kind of came together, and I really like the way you all have delineated, here are the steps, take the steps. And the fun thing is you get to decide what those steps are. Did anyone else want to mention the steps that they took to get to where they are now?
I wanted to share, when I worked as a career peer educator in college, I learned that when I worked with student advising, it's a reality that people change careers at least 5 times in their lifetime. So as what Anna said, it's non-linear. And sometimes it's like what Dave moved and Sandeep moved from different industries. And it happens. And also, I understand a lot from working in PEP and working with students who are educators, part of PEP, who went to community college. There's so many things that everybody juggles. There's family responsibilities, personal responsibilities. And so I think the important thing is to understand holistically that however way I'm working to achieve my goals, that being okay with some part in my life that I might not be able to fulfill everything, but knowing that part of my values are still there in the work that I do, and knowing that throughout this route, that is what's going to keep me going. But I also keep in mind, when I worked as an educator, I learned about the school to prison pipeline and how elitist some universities are. Like for me, I work at Stanford. And maybe for some of you who are now at Skyline who went to Lowell High School, there's this big, for me, I went to Lowell High School, and that was really difficult for me. And there was, as I mentioned earlier, there were students who didn't understand the importance of also going to community colleges, coming from a competitive high school like Lowell. And right now there's this big controversy about the high school changing from its traditional merit-based admissions to a lottery. And so it's also understanding that everybody is supposed to have an equal opportunity to achieve, and not just from merit. So that's how I am understanding whether I learned a lot about that when I worked in after school programming, because and I think it's related to Janice's next question, which is, what's the biggest risk that I've taken? For me, I was working in after school program for 3 years. I had to move back home because my grandpa was sick. And so I moved back home and I took care of him with my mom and my brother. And I was learning how to work with parents. That was the most fulfilling part of my time so far in my brief life. And at the end of the day, after school program teachers see everybody at the end of the day, literally, asking about homework, learning about, why did my child have a bad day, things that the youth are going through that they can't tell their teachers or their parents. So those are things that I keep in mind, and I admire all of you who are at Skyline and doing this work. And as what folks have shared, it's important too to know that you can finish, because we're here cheering you on.
Yeah, I think during our time at Galing Bata, and also our time in Pinoy Pinay Educational Partnerships, PEP, which is the organization Arena's brought up a few times, I started to realize how very early on we started to internalize the world, and how we are supposed to see ourselves in it, how we start believing certain messages about ourselves and the communities we're from. And I think so much of what my own educational journey has been a process of unlearning. And so like when I'm in these spaces, like in community spaces or working with young people, so much of it is taking a step back and, asking these, critical thinking questions of like, how do you see the world? How would you like to see it? How do you see yourself thriving here? So much of what we learn about our identities are also mediated through arts and culture, right? And so like, what does it mean to have people with an equity and social justice lens creating arts and culture, right? Like how can that shift paradigms and start creating more equitable access to spaces that, people like certain communities, like BIPOC communities, have historically been denied access to, right? Or like their ability to grow and thrive is stunted or challenged. So that's like, just thinking also about that, right? About like also why we're in these spaces and why we do this kind of work.
Yeah, like it sounds like the question, right? What is the biggest risk you've taken? Sometimes like just trying to unlearn is the biggest risk, I really like that Arena and Dara have also kind of outlined, like those are the experiences of being a first generation student, the struggles of taking care of home, moving back home, being home, and then also just like thinking about the world, because the home is a part of the world in many ways. Yeah, I thank you both for sharing. And Arena, I hope that your grandpa is okay. Thank you for telling us about that. I see you nodding.
Arena, similarly to you, I also moved home after college because my mom was diagnosed with breast cancer. And I also felt very a strong need to be home with my family and to be with them. And it was challenging because you get used to living on your own, and then all of a sudden now you're back at home in your hometown, and it's just a weird feeling. And I was there for about 3 years at my family's house, and I really had no clear direction of where I wanted to go or how I wanted to use my degree. I was bartending. I just kind of tried everything under the sun. And actually, it ended up being a gift that I was there with my family, because it gave me the time to be able to deepen my understanding of how branding worked and social media and blogging. I built a few websites and all of these like little things, and long story short, I eventually did build this business while I was living at home. And the only reason I was really able to do it was because I didn't have any overhead. I didn't have to pay for rent in the city. I was very lucky to be able to live at my home, at my family's house. And so it opened a door for me in a weird way. And now my mom actually works with me. We work together, and she's helped me build my business, which is super cool.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
That's so cool.
A very happy ending. But going back to the question, which is what is the biggest risk that you've ever taken? I had been living at my parents' house for about 3 years, and I was ready to get out by that time. I was like, I gotta do this. I gotta get out of the house. And I saw a small crack in the window, or small crack in the door, or the door opening. And I saw this apartment listed on Craigslist in Oakland. It was this old,
I don't think they know what Craigslist is, by the way.
It was this old Victorian like duplex, and I was just so drawn to it. And I was like, I have to live here. I want to live here. And it was like one room in this little apartment. And I told my mom and dad that I was going to get this apartment, that I was going to go and live there. And my dad was like, what are you doing? You should not be doing this. Like, are you going to be able to make this? Because at that point, it was on my own. I was on my own means. And so I did. I said I was going to do it. And I made the decision within a few hours. And I ended up moving to Oakland, and best decision I ever made. That's where I like really was able to build a community, and the business actually flourished because I was there. I was going to as many events as I could and just talking to people, and just, in the city and there. And it was a great decision, but it was really scary to have to trust that intuition, gut feeling, even though, maybe it probably wasn't the smartest, most responsible thing to do, but it was the right thing for me. So, yeah.
I think part of the issue is that we're forced to fit into these perceived societal expectations and also family expectations of, okay, you finished high school, now you have to go to college, and then after college you have to immediately find a job, and then you have to start paying your bills and this and that. And I don't think people realize that everyone has their own path. So even starting college, you know, a lot of people don't know what they want to focus in, and that's okay. But there's a lot of societal expectations that are weighing down on students and even people that are adults, that we have to, you know, meet these certain barriers or these benchmarks to, you know, be successful, or what society deems as someone being successful. And I think that is a societal issue that won't ever go away, but hopefully with the changes that each generation brings forward, hopefully it won't be a huge issue for newer waves of students.
Wow. Yes, this is the puzzle pieces coming together. Everyone is telling us what were the pieces they had to work with, you know? And sometimes one is missing and it's annoying, right? Or it's a struggle. And then eventually we'll come together. I really like Anna, the story that you shared about moving back home. And it almost seems like in retrospect, right? Hindsight is 2020. It makes sense now why you had to move back home, you know? I really love that.
Absolutely.
Yeah, Dave. Oh,
Yeah, I mean, to the last question about risk, I had actually achieved the position that I wanted. I was working in higher education, managing international exchange programs at San Diego State University. I was sending thousands of students abroad. I was doing what I thought I wanted to do, but I also kind of felt like I had painted myself into a very highly specialized field. And was feeling a little stagnant and wanting to do something different. And so the big risk was I left that completely and went from, you know, advising in universities to technology sales for universities. And I mentioned before, I had to start over again at the very bottom and start the basic skills, but it was really scary. But again, you know, hard work, persistent, just being resourceful, being able to communicate with people, I was able to quickly move through that. But it was a scary jump. I was in a comfortable position. I could have just stayed in the university and ridden it out to retirement. But I wanted to try something new and challenge myself. And so even if you feel like you're painting yourself into a corner, you can try to find those life skills and those soft skills, and again, be able to articulate those to other people and how the value you bring to their organization.
I love that. Dave, can you tell us what you did at work last week? This is our next question.
I just live in Zoom all day, every day. I'm meeting all day in Zoom, working with universities, advising them on how to purchase it, but also how to set it up. And because I come from a student affairs background, I'm a huge advocate for getting all the student affairs folks on. So always trying to get, you know, Career Center and EOP and all you know, all those support services that I really am passionate about. So they often think about just instruction on Zoom, but there's a lot of uses that is really helping to connect students with mentors and tutors and getting counseling services. And so I'm really happy that I'm still supporting students in my new role indirectly.
That's super needed. Other people, what did you do at work last week on Zoom?
So I actually do utilize Zoom every week. And the example I'm going to give, it ties into my TV reporting days. So each week we do a weekly broadcast update for our families and community members of the latest happenings to, you know, get our campuses reopened and have students come back onto campus, or what the news is about different services that are available to students and families, even through distance learning. And, you know, I integrate my experience as a TV reporter in my current role, working for a school district, using Zoom, where we do a weekly broadcast. And then I have a colleague that edits it using Adobe Premiere, and then we publish it on YouTube and then push it out through our communication channels across to all of our families. So that's what I did last week, and I do it every week.
Wow, so needed as well. Other folks, what did you do last week at work?
I'm on a road trip right now. I actually put my stuff in storage and decided that I wanted to figure out where I wanted to live. So I am traveling right now. And a week ago today, I was in Chicago, and I ended up staying way longer than I anticipated. I was in Chicago for a whole week, and it was wonderful. Definitely on the list of maybes. And I don't know, I wasn't there in the winter though, so I'm not sure. But yeah, a lot of what personal branding is all about is creating content and sharing content online. It's the fastest way to build your credibility as a thought leader, is to share what you know. And so I've been sharing a lot of this trip on Instagram and TikTok, and just sharing stories and lessons that I've learned along the way, and conversations and with all the people I've met. And so a lot of my work has been just filming and writing and just driving and then trying to make it all fit into one, and scheduling, and driving across time zones has been very hard and difficult, because you're trying to figure out, where's my meeting going to be, or what time it's going to be. And so it's been a crazy last week, but it's been great. All part of it.
Wow, traveling during COVID-19 too. How has that been?
You know, it's very interesting to see how the rest of the country is handling the pandemic, and people's perception of it, and, you know, what they've lost and gained. And it's very, very, it's a unique time to be seeing the rest of the country. Also, right now in this political climate and during this election season, you know, you notice that bigger cities are very pro-mask, and everyone is taking it super seriously, which is great. And then you get 30, 40 miles outside of a big city, and, you know, people aren't taking it as seriously. You just notice this ebb and flow. And yeah, it's very interesting.
Yeah, I'm glad you're being safe and even documenting this during this time, right? Like, what a time to be out in the field and, you know, building your career. I think, just like we've made references to the Great Recession, I think it's one of those times that we will never forget, and we need to let people know what it was like to live during this time. So
Yep.
yeah, I'm glad you are safe.
Yeah, me too. It's, you know, it's interesting. I'm spending quite a bit of time alone, because I'm not, you know, it's not the same as it would have been like a year ago, right? Where you're out, you're meeting people all the time. Of course you meet people here and there, but it has been a lot of alone time. And that has also been good, because it gives you time to reflect and to think about things, and to just, yeah, study the rest of the way people are handling it.
Yeah.
Yeah, at this last week, I was doing some press follow-ups for our current exhibition at SOMARTS. Our current show is called Living Legacies, Dia de los Muertos 2020. We've always had our annual Dia de los Muertos exhibition for the past 21 years. And so there has been a lot of pivots we had to make in order to make sure that people can experience the exhibition safely and also virtually. But a lot of the themes that this year's exhibition is exploring is just like all of these multiple ruptures that are happening right now, like all of these multiple ruptures we're collectively experiencing, and what's being grown or birthed from these ruptures, right? So thinking about Black Lives Matter and like the call for racial justice, exploring that conversation and that movement and moment, talking about healthcare and access in regards to COVID-19. And then just like also our personal relationship to family in this moment and to one another in this moment, because the ways in which we're building relationships and connecting with each other is being mediated through the camera or through our phones, or even more so through like, platforms like Zoom, right? So how are our relationships shifting with one another, but also how is it shifting how we mourn, right? Like there has been a lot of loss this year. And so like we've always believed that mourning, like, I've been taught that when we mourn together. Like it's never something we do alone. Whereas with COVID-19, with shelter in place, like we've been shifting our relationship to mourning. What does mourning look like in practice when we can't gather together physically? And when being in isolation is the best way we practice collective care.
Wow, Dara, I love that you get to explore the answers and like multiplicities to these questions every day at work, especially as an arts curator. And I have sort of like seen you sort of like build all of these things together into what you do now. And I just really love that you have always stuck to what you love, and so I can tell you're smiling under the mask.
Yeah, can you? I'm like, oh, can you tell?
I can tell when we mourn together. Yeah, that is a strong line and a huge loss for this year. So, wow, we all do so much at work. We've heard like the practical, and we've heard sort of like the, just even like the intellectual, just sort of like thinking about what happens when we do certain things. Arena, did you want to tell us too really quick, and then we'll take a break after this?
Yeah, in relation to just learning and building relationships, which is a big theme of our own cultural works, each of us on this panel. As I mentioned earlier, I'm working on a commission with SF MoMA, the San Francisco Museum of Modern Art. And I've been interviewing shopkeepers along my home. I've lived along Mission Street my whole life in San Francisco. And so I've been interviewing shop vendors. There's a guy who's his name's Mohammed, and he runs this discount store called Discount City, and he's known as the first store in the Mission to sell the Trump piñatas. And so I interviewed him last week, and he's like, yeah, we've been selling this since 2015. I've sold like 20,000 of these. So it's interesting and I've also been interviewing, last week I interviewed muralists on how they feel like murals have been a big part of these uprisings and these movements, and was what I've been also checking in with a lot of Stanford students, and also my current high school students when I worked with them in middle school, is they're attending all these different protests and events and movement work. And so it's beautiful to learn on the ground. So that's what I think the benefit of this time of working, I'm privileged to work from home, is that I can work from home, do my work, and then I go out and wear my artist hat and do my projects. And so on the ground, getting to know what folks are up to, and also getting my COVID testing. So I got my COVID testing last Friday. That was my first time getting, like
yeah,
long like
Q-tip
up my nose, and so I'm negative. And so it's just important to also practice that safety and responsibility as I continue working in proximity with people who are essential workers.
Yes, totally. Go ahead.
Sorry, I'm also gonna just like be Arena's hype bay right now and just be like, you're also doing that thing at the Brooklyn Museum, like with Leanne. And so I also want to, like, I think like there is so much to adapt to right now with like COVID-19 and being online. And I also think it's offered a lot of artists the ability to connect with one another and do like programming or, like co-programming and partnerships with other people and spaces, not so regionally specific. So there's also like an accessibility that's being sprouted at this moment. But Just wanted to bring that up because Arena, you do a lot.
I love how a lot of us, for me, I'm virtually traveling, and then we have someone like Anna who's like literally like, I'm vicariously, all of us are vicariously experiencing your travel. So I definitely will check out. I don't have a TikTok, but I'm sure if someone links me to your TikTok, I could see it on a website.
Yeah, I just started the TikToks.
Do you do those Gen Z things that you go to the store and you do those dance moves?
No, well, I've been like lurking on TikTok for a while, you know.
Lurking, that's a good word.
Seeing what the kids are doing these days. And finally I was like, I'm gonna do this. Like, I'm gonna get on TikTok. And my last 2 videos have done so well. I gained like 3,000 followers in the last like day. But
would you like jumping up and down because you're considered cool by these young kids?
Like, oh my gosh, I'm honored.
See, yeah. these college students have to realize that, you know, we're still kids at heart, even though that, you know, we're not in school anymore.
I request Anna. Okay, so there's this guy named Dogface208 who's super famous, and my Walgreens in my neighborhood has run out of cranberry juice. So I'm trying to get cranberry juice, but I'm sure if you do like a cranberry juice, you know, you're drinking cranberry juice, playing Fleetwood Mac, you're gonna be fine. More followers. I'm one of them. I might even sign up for a TikTok account.
Yeah, you have to get on TikTok for sure.
She needs another follower.
Oh my gosh, I love this. I also saw that the person the originator of the skateboard while drinking cranberry juice, I saw that he has a mural in San Francisco now too, actually.
Does he?
Yeah.
Amazing.
I think I love that this is the arts, language, and communications panel, but really it is the building relationships panel. It is the pro TikTok panel, pro youth panel. So I think
it just speaks to the versatility that you have to, you know, be aware of in today's society. You can't just be narrow-minded in one industry or one way of communications, because it won't reach everyone, and you need to spread your wings to, you know, reach every type of audience that you can on any type of platform that's out there.
Yes, you just said exactly what I was going to say. We are on the same frequency, everybody. I actually just have one major question left, and so it's like a 2-part question. What is the most interesting development or experience that has helped you get you to move ahead in your field? And I would say even in your life, like what are some of the most interesting developments that have occurred? And what advice would you give for others who want to set off in a similar direction? So folks who might want to do exactly what you are doing. And you can list a study abroad experience, any degree programs that you've been through, if you're on, you know, a life-changing road trip, or if you've done any collaborations. You know, what advice would you have? What is the most interesting development in your life or field right now? And anyone can start.
So I'll start. So I recently got married, and in September actually, and found my husband during COVID, and he slid into my DMs, and anyway.
I love it.
It really is. And anyway, it's pretty groundbreaking in the Indian community because we had traditional Indian ceremonies. I'm from North India, he's from South India. So we had traditional Indian ceremonies with traditional attire, and we knew it was going to be controversial, but it was very important that we had it covered. And we knew if we had it covered that it would go viral, and it did. And it was in the New York Times for the wedding announcement. It was covered by the local press, and then it was picked up from the UK and in Canada, and then also in India. And our wedding highlight video was also viral, and it's still, you know, going viral. And we have Indian press contacting us and doing video podcasts, audio podcasts, newspapers, Indian networks. And it's crazy because I'm I'm not leaning on my life experiences so much. I'm actually leaning on my work experience and utilizing my experience on camera and also securing media coverage and, you know, preparing executives to be on camera. And I'm actually doing all of these things for my personal life to inspire people that are, you know, struggling to come out of the closet in a culture that's still, you know, finding ways to accept and embrace the LGBTQI plus community. And we knew if we invited the media that it would be big. And we're glad that it is big, because our goal is to make it easier for members of the community that are still struggling in our home country of India. And so it's crazy that I'm really leaning on my work experience in my personal life. So yeah.
That's amazing. Congratulations. You both are so inspiring and full of surprises on this panel. Thank you, Sandeep, for sharing with us. I'm going to look up that article later.
Deep, that's absolutely amazing. And it takes so much courage to be able to put your story out there and to share it with people honestly and openly. And like, I just commend you for that. That's really incredible.
Thank you. And you know, there's one thing I would like to tell the students is that, you know, when you put yourself out there, you're going to get dissenters. People are going to message you and they're going to threaten to do harm towards you, or, you know, say bad things, things that they want to tear you down. But it's important to remember that, you know, you're living your truth and you're doing what you want to do to be successful and achieve your goals. As long as you're not hurting anyone, you're not doing anything wrong. And there's different ways to achieve that, or there's different ways to, you know, live your truth and your life, and that's okay. And there's a huge group of positive people that exist all over the world and even in your community that are there to support you, even when there's one or two people or a group of minority group of people that are trying to tear you down.
Yeah, you know, Sandeep, I love that. And like I said, I think it takes so much courage to be able to share that. I think when I look at this question, like what is the most interesting development or experience that's helped you move ahead in your career? I think it really is being brave enough and being bold enough to forge your own path and go your own way. And that is incredibly hard to do, as Sandeep was just telling us. I mean, to be able to believe in yourself enough to say, I'm going to do what feels right for me. I'm going to follow my intuition, I'm going to follow my gut, even if it means going and working beyond the status quo you do, or what you see your friends doing, or what you see that your parents have done. Again, I said at the very beginning, but go your own way and there are no rules. And I think that that mentality has helped me get to where I am today with having my own business and having the freedom to be able to work and live in the way that I want to, and to be able to have the kind of life that I've always imagined for myself. That would never have been possible if I judged my success or if I judged my traction on the same yardstick as my peers. Because there were many months and many years of my life where I saw my friends getting great jobs in the city. You know, they were working at these awesome corporate jobs. They had benefits, they had security, and it was so appealing and sexy to me. Like I wanted that security, but I wanted to fulfill the desires of my heart more. And I wanted to do something that I loved even more. And following that was very difficult, but it paid off, and it's still paying off. And I'm sure it will continue to pay off. So it's worth it. It's worth the wait. Don't settle for anything that you don't truly want.
I totally agree with what both of y'all have shared. And Sandeep, congratulations. I saw your Instagram, so I was like, oh my gosh, he's gonna share about that. They're gorgeous pictures.
Look at you doing your research.
I added all of you on LinkedIn, so add me back. I think about how it takes years for things to align. So that's how I right now, like for instance, I'm in love with the world, with people, with art. Um, it takes years for things to align, and being patient with that. And for me, as someone who's interested in archiving my community, uh, sometimes I don't have to. I don't feel pressure to share things right away. It takes time, and I think, what was I going to share? Yeah, I forgot, but that's where I'll end mine.
Yeah, as everyone is, sharing their stories and their narratives, I think about how important it is to have ownership of our stories and how there's so much power in really understanding ourselves and the individual journeys that we've gone through, right? Like there's so much power in that. And, like as I'm moving forward in this field and as I connect and learn from other people, like that's the thing that keeps coming up is having ownership of our stories, to be the storyteller, the story writer. Like I think goes such a long way, and like that impact is insurmountable. It's incredible, right? And like another thing that I'm hearing too is very much about process and not comparing our journeys and our stories with other people's, because like that kind of comparison really tends to devalue our own journeys and like the lessons that we've been learning along the way. One thing I do want to add to that is also redefining and transforming our relationship with failure, because failure is very much part of this process. It's okay to fail. When we start forging our own pathways, and like really shaping our narratives, like failure is very much a part of that. Like within failure, there's lessons, there's opportunity for growth. But I think for so long we've been taught that failure is not an option, right? Like I definitely had to uncouple myself from that idea in order to like humanize the journey that I was on. Because with every failure, there was a lesson there. And with every failure, there was always the opportunity to give up. But there's something that like awakens inside of you when you fail and you get back up again and you keep going and you reflect on that process and you're going to try again. Like maybe this, like, it's very similar to like art making, right? Like you have this great idea. And so you try and like, you learn, you get the materials, you try to sculpt it out, and sometimes it's not going to work, but maybe there's an accident there that you can move forward with, or maybe there's a new strategy that you can brainstorm, right? And so I think so much of that is like applicable to everyone's career journey and career path, and also like personal journey too.
Dara, I love that so much. And you've been talking a lot about storytelling. I feel like that's like a big theme in your message. And I want to just echo that. I mean, I think that everyone loves a hero's journey. And when something bad or like a hard obstacle that we face in our lives comes up, I mean, that's part of the narrative. That's part of your story. It can be used to like build you up and to inspire and, teach others from how you've learned from what you've experienced too. So I think that, the hurdles are all part of it. So, yeah.
We haven't talked a lot about networking, and I don't mean networking from like going out and doing events and things like that, but just making strong human connections with the people that you work with, the people that you're engaging with, and having those genuine relationships and having people see you as genuine. And later on, those things come back around. People like, doors will open because of the relationships that you build in your career and your personal life. And people will be your advocate later on and open doors for you as well. So, being genuine in your relationships and just putting yourself out there really helps open doors moving forward.
I really love this. Thank you everyone for sharing your experiences and wisdom. I've taken so much from this panel, and I hope that those who are listening and watching can really sit with these strong lines. You all have said it's really important to live your truth, to be the storytellers. Don't compare to others because it devalues your own experience. It takes years to align. This is also a poem, by the way. So maybe this is the poet in me that's finding all of these lines. Within failure, there's growth. And I really like that Dave talked about doors. And if y'all remember earlier in this conversation, Anna, you said, I saw a door open with Craigslist and finding the apartment that you wanted. And maybe again, this is poetry to me, but I've learned recently that doors are load bearing. And that's why it's really difficult to move them, like in a house. It's difficult to even change the direction of a door. You have to really like make sure the door is going to be okay. And so it takes a lot of time and maybe this is metaphorical, but it takes a lot of time to move the door in any direction or to move it in its placement in the wall. And then maybe the wall shouldn't be there, right? But I really love that you all have sort of opened the door for yourselves, and you all here in this conversation, you're also opening the door for so many students. So I thought that I was the teacher here, but really I'm just here to learn. So thank you all for teaching and being a part of this conversation. And I hope that we all get to intersect at some point, or I hope you all get to intersect too, again in the future. This is really magical. So thank you for being here.
Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.